I'm Megan. I married my husband, Stephen, 3 years ago. However, I am estranged from my mother-in-law. One time, my sister-in-law, Susan, contacted my husband, and we arranged to meet. Honestly, my husband and his sister aren't that close. From my perspective, she's a sweet and thoughtful sister, though. My sister-in-law hadn't contacted us for trivial matters before, so I wondered what it could be about, but she said, "Actually, I'm getting married this time." She has been dating her boyfriend for about a year. Her boyfriend is still in his early 20s, but it seems he's already saying things like, "I think it's time to get married." And apparently, he's been showing her wedding magazines and even forcing her to pick out rings. And that was before he proposed. Despite disliking forceful men, it seems my sister-in-law decided to marry him. My sister-in-law is in her late 20s, about a decade younger than my husband. Although I congratulated them sincerely, deep down, I felt troubled by this. I believe my husband felt the same way. Ah, I see. Today I figured out the reason you came. It's about your mom, isn't it? I said that and my sister-in-law nodded. I remember well how Mom behaved at your wedding. Since then, it seems even relatives don't come near, and isn't Mom overly attached to me anyway? If she finds out I have a boyfriend, I don't know what she will do to me. In the past, she even barged into my boyfriend's parents' house, pressuring us to break up. While serving tea, I unintentionally remarked, "Your mom is really difficult to deal with, isn't she?" It's really embarrassing having such relatives, my sister-in-law sighed. If you truly want to marry him, you have to cut ties with your mother, my husband advised seriously. It's understandable for my husband to feel this way. The reason my husband and I are estranged from his mother is because of our wedding. His mother is unconventional in general parlance. She had my husband when she was 18, but his father, also 18 then, left her. So she left my husband with her parents and didn't care for him much. My husband waited eagerly for his mother, who never came to see him, but she married another man and gave birth to my sister-in-law. More than a decade later, she took in my husband, who was already in high school when she divorced because she wanted money. For my mother-in-law, my husband was more of a cash cow than a son. She made him contribute his part-time job earnings to the household and doted only on my sister-in-law. My husband received no gratitude from his mother. Instead, he faced harsh treatment. His collection of action figures, a hobby he cherished, was mercilessly sold off, and he was even forbidden from spending time with friends. My husband became pitifully lacking in understanding women to the point that it was almost tragic. Megan, you're not like my mother. If my mom is the devil, you're like an angel, or even a goddess, he said, opening his heart to me. Flattering as it may seem, I'm not good enough or beautiful enough to be called a goddess, but compared to my mother-in-law, it made sense that I would look like one. That's how bad a person my mother-in-law was. Such was my mother-in-law's great opposition to my husband and my marriage. The reason is simple. Then I won't get Stephen's salary anymore, will I? You thief! She scolded me like that. My mother-in-law demanded from my parents, saying, If you really want to get married, then pay the betrothal money properly. How about $30,000? My husband said, Don't be ridiculous. There's no way such a demand would be accepted. Then, next to my mother-in-law, he apologized to my parents, lowering his head and saying, I'm sorry, Mom and Dad. If he hadn't apologized to my parents, our marriage would have been called off. I loved my husband, and my parents agreed that Stephen was not a bad person. My husband started saying, I want to cut ties with my mom. Having a parent like her makes me embarrassed. Then came the wedding. My mother-in-law showed up wearing a red dress as if she were the main character. She wore rings with fancy diamonds, rubies, sapphires, and more, but strangely, they didn't look good on her. My husband yelled, Today's main characters are us. No, Megan. What's with you, Mom, trying to steal the show? But my mother-in-law remained unfazed. I couldn't have a wedding when I gave birth to you, so it's okay for me to be the center of attention today, she retorted. My parents were already exasperated. My mother sighed while my husband clenched his lips until they bled. My relatives were understandably unamused, and even my husband's relatives wore expressions of disbelief. I forced a smile at my mother-in-law's outrageous behavior, but at that moment I had a sinking feeling that things would only get worse. Even so, there was no option to cancel the wedding, so all we could do was pray that my mother-in-law wouldn't do anything. Please, God, can you keep my mother-in-law quiet until the ceremony is over? I prayed for the first time. Whether that prayer was answered or not, nothing happened during the ceremony. However, an incident occurred after the ceremony ended. This is my congratulatory gift, as Megan will reluctantly become my daughter-in-law. So it wouldn't be a problem if I took all the gifts, right? My mother-in-law said, demanding all the wedding gifts for herself. I was taken aback by my mother-in-law's actions, and my husband rushed to chase after her to rectify the situation. But my mother-in-law was nowhere to be found. She has the agility of a cat burglar. After that, my husband tried calling his mother several times, but she didn't pick up and just disappeared. I probably won't encounter such unreasonable people again for the rest of my life. That's how unbelievable my mother-in-law is to me. My husband tearfully apologized to me and our relatives who witnessed such a scene, saying, "I'm truly sorry. I'll cut ties with that woman, so please forgive me for just this once and spare me from divorce." Everyone reassured my husband. "You're not at fault. It's that person who's in the wrong, so there's no need for a divorce." I too feel sorry for my husband, and I can't forgive my mother-in-law. Let's cut ties for my husband's sake. "I feel bad for the people who gave us gifts, but let's consider it severance pay. If that's enough to cut ties, then it's a small price." Thus, my husband cut ties with his mother. It seems that the relatives decided not to get involved in the matter at all. After that, my husband consulted a lawyer to ensure the estrangement legal documents were prepared, and as soon as my mother-in-law returned from her extravagant spending spree with the wedding gift money, she was promptly asked to sign. But I couldn't find peace of mind in that, because for my husband, who didn't have a father, she was his only parent. Was it really okay for me to marry him under these circumstances? Did my presence cause him to lose his family? With these thoughts, I suddenly felt lonely and began to cry. Then a white cat named Dora jumped onto my lap. Although Dora is a stray cat, it often comes to play in the yard. And whenever I look sad, it always jumps onto my lap like this. Right? This was for the best, wasn't it? For our happiness. I continued to comfort myself while stroking Dora. Thank you always, Dora. I cut off all contact with my mother-in-law after that, but not with my doted-upon sister-in-law. My sister-in-law is stunning, like a model who could be on a magazine cover, just like my mother-in-law was. By the way, my husband is more like your average Joe. Because my sister-in-law is like that, it seems many guys have told her they like her. Maybe over 100, but she only dated a few of them. However, none of the relationships lasted more than a month. This is because my mother-in-law always interferes, fearing that her beloved daughter might be taken away. It seems my sister-in-law was once proposed to, but at that moment my mother-in-law suddenly barged in and threw the engagement ring the man offered into the river. The man reportedly said, "I don't want to become family with such a mother-in-law. Forget about marriage," and left. The abuse of my mother-in-law continued for the next hour or so, and finally my sister-in-law finally calmed down. "So I plan to marry him without telling Mom. Next time I'll definitely make sure no one interferes," my sister-in-law said firmly before leaving. As soon as the front door closed, I couldn't help but ask my husband, "Do you think no one will interfere?" "Impossible," my husband replied curtly. "There's no way she can get married without telling my mother-in-law. After all, my sister-in-law lives with her. It's a miracle she's been able to keep it hidden until now. My sister-in-law and mother-in-law live together. My mother-in-law is a housewife, and now she's living off my sister-in-law's income, so there's no way she'd let go of her cash cow daughter, whom she dearly loves. Furthermore, my sister-in-law is completely dependent on my mother-in-law. She's never cooked a meal or even washed her own underwear because of my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law would say, You don't have to do anything. You're tired from work, so rest. What if you get hurt? I wouldn't want that. And she wouldn't let her do anything. If there's someone who gets injured just from washing underwear, I'd like to see that. However, if she decides to get married, it becomes not just our problem, but also an issue for both families. How do they explain it to his parents? That was the biggest problem. I've heard that it's not uncommon for couples to have small weddings these days, which might make it possible for the two of them to keep it a secret somehow. But what about afterward? Even if they managed to get married, I can't imagine that mother-in-law of mine allowing them to live as a couple. She's been terrible to me and my husband. So I dread to think what kind of attacks she'll launch against my sister-in-law's boyfriend. It would be fine if they were just used as cash cows like my husband, but it's unlikely to be that simple.
She's only thinking about how she can make things easier for herself somehow. The only reason she told us she was getting married was because she wanted us to intercede if anything went wrong. She's always been naive in her thinking.
Those words from my husband made me remember. Come to think of it, she didn't help us at all during our wedding, did she? Actually, it seemed like she was enjoying the food everyone left behind when we were going through a hard time. Does she enjoy eating out of other people's misery? Can she protect her husband with that? If she can't do that, then she's not even qualified to be married. It would be better to suggest breaking off the engagement even now. That way we can avoid dealing with such an unhappy person.
I don't care what happens to them. I'll spend my life protecting you, my beloved wife.
My husband, perhaps embarrassed by this declaration, blushed and looked down. I love my husband like that. That's why I chose him. Then a few months later, my sister-in-law contacted me again. Now she wants to introduce me to her boyfriend too. My mother-in-law hadn't found out yet.
Well, if she's serious, I guess I can't help but support her.
When my husband said that, I decided to think positively about my sister-in-law's marriage. But here's the problem. My sister-in-law's boyfriend turned out to be quite a character. He looks like he's into sports and he's definitely the macho, cool type. But my husband is cooler. I listened to how they met, and at first, we were all chatting amiably.
Because she never lets me meet her family at all, I started to think, am I just being deceived and played?
Just when my sister-in-law's boyfriend started talking about it, an unsettling atmosphere began to develop. That's not true. Actually, my mom's a bit intense. My sister-in-law hurriedly began making excuses, but I was surprised by her generosity in not mentioning anything about my mother-in-law. Did she really think they could just get through the wedding in silence? Then as the conversation progressed, in order to demonstrate the severity of my mother-in-law, I took over and explained my husband's upbringing and the incidents at the wedding, since he's not good at expressing himself. About halfway through, my sister-in-law's boyfriend's face started to pale. 10 minutes later, I explained the severity of my mother-in-law to my sister-in-law's boyfriend, but he muttered,
"The worst."
I said, "She's really the worst, isn't she, that mother-in-law?" And agreed. But my sister-in-law's boyfriend said,
"That's not it. The one who's terrible is you. How dare you lie like that? You're exaggerating too much."
Upon hearing that, I was speechless. Even my husband had his mouth open, looking dumbfounded.
"So you're against us getting married, huh? That's why you're talking such nonsense, right? There's no way someone like that exists."
Both my husband and I were momentarily stunned by this man's statements. Meanwhile, my sister-in-law's boyfriend was getting more and more heated.
"I feel sorry for your mother. Don't you have any sense of awareness about being a wife? Isn't it embarrassing to bully the mother-in-law instead of the daughter-in-law?"
Bullying my mother-in-law? What is this guy talking about? I don't get why the word awareness is popping up here. I'm totally lost. It's like I'm having a conversation with an alien or something.
Isn't it the bride's role to support her mother-in-law? She's just a little mean because her cute daughter was taken away. She's cute, my girlfriend. You have to be gentle in those situations.
So does that mean I have to give in even if I'm not at fault? I cut ties because I wasn't on that level, but why can't you understand that?
I think it's because you're like that is why we can't get married. Please be kinder to your mom. I'll even help you reconcile.
My sister's boyfriend started making no sense to me, and our relationship has completely soured. I never thought there'd be someone as unbelievable as my mother-in-law here. The world is small. About 2 months later, my sister-in-law's boyfriend forcefully planned a wedding. That said, it was a modest affair with just immediate family from both sides, close friends, and nearby relatives. Well, if it's like that, the damage might be minimal, even if my mother-in-law causes some trouble. I was drinking when I got the call about the ceremony. My husband repeatedly asked my sister if everything was okay, but it seems he didn't get a satisfactory answer, just a hesitant, probably. When we went to the venue, memories of our own wedding came flooding back, and on our table there was also a tag with my mother-in-law's name on it. Oh, so in the end, your mother found out, huh? Well, I guess that's how it goes, I muttered, and my husband said,
My sister's boyfriend insisted that there was a wedding, and she couldn't possibly not invite my mom. I knew there was no way it would end smoothly.
I nodded broadly.
Yesterday, it seems my sister's boyfriend couldn't stay silent any longer and talked to that woman yesterday. He really has a knack for adding fuel to the fire.
That woman is my mother-in-law. My husband hasn't called my mother-in-law by her name since then. A few minutes later, my mother-in-law, dressed appropriately for a wedding unlike last time, appeared. However, she came with an unbelievable person. Yes, it was an unfamiliar baby. The unexpected appearance of my mother-in-law left both relatives and other attendees in a stir. Then my mother-in-law slumped down and mumbled something about my sister-in-law's boyfriend. It was eerie, especially with her holding the baby. She seemed poised to cause trouble without a doubt. Amidst the commotion in the venue, at that moment the announcer's voice cut through.
It's time for the entrance of the newlyweds. Please welcome them with applause.
With that announcement, cheerful music began to play. Once my mother-in-law was forgotten, the venue erupts with applause. My sister-in-law and her boyfriend appear at the entrance, and the spotlight shines on them. My mother-in-law suddenly raises her head. This child is ours, yours and mine. So leave my daughter, and then you should give me child support too. She yelled and confronted my sister-in-law's boyfriend. I chased after my mother-in-law. My sister-in-law's boyfriend exclaimed. I quickly caught up, and after picking up the baby, I restrained my mother-in-law in a headlock. However, she continued to struggle, so I accidentally ended up flinging her away. It's been a while, so I may have overdone it a bit. By the time I regretted it, my mother-in-law had collided with the food table and then crashed into the wall. Yes, I took judo from elementary school to high school. For someone like me who was used to throwing adults left and right, throwing my mother-in-law was a piece of cake. I guess it's just been a while, so maybe I got a little carried away? I regret doing that. I wish I could have thrown her like that at my own wedding, and I felt guilty for ruining the food. I'll offer to reimburse her later. My mother-in-law was a bit puzzled by the suddenness of the situation. Apparently, the strike was not bad. Good. As my mother-in-law was about to unsteadily rise to her feet, I promptly tripped her up. Mom, are you trying to ruin the ceremony? And whose child is this baby? You don't really think it's her boyfriend's child, do you? As I said this, I looked at my sister-in-law's boyfriend, who vigorously shook his head. Then my mother-in-law. Yes, that's right. I just borrowed this baby from around here. If I claim it's yours, I can get child support and separate you from my daughter. I thought I was killing two birds with one stone. Everyone was stunned by her unbelievable statement. When it was our turn, we cut ties because you ran off with all the gifts. But what are you planning to do in this situation? I declared loudly enough for my sister's boyfriend's parents to hear. The venue fell silent. My mother-in-law turned bright red in an instant. To my question, my sister's boyfriend's father...
Of course, we'll cut ties. Is that okay with you two?
He glared at his son.
Of course. I don't want to have to deal with such a lousy person in the future. You're okay with that, right?
Of course. So, Mother, thank you for all you have done for me. I'm going to sever my parent-child relationship with you as of today. My sister declared the estrangement. After that, my sister-in-law's boyfriend came to me.
It was exactly as you said.
He apologized for his previous remarks.
I'm truly sorry.
He lowered his head deeply in apology. Absolutely. Got it? From now on, you'll be the one protecting my sister-in-law from my mother-in-law. Remember, if you can't do that, you'll end up like my mother-in-law.
I'll keep that in mind, sis. No, I mean, big sister?
It seems my sister-in-law's boyfriend, or rather, my sister-in-law's husband, was impressed by my splendid throwing technique and started calling me Big Sister. Well, I don't mind being called that, so from now on, I'll take care of them as a big sister. I gave my sister-in-law a thorough scolding for secretly getting married without informing my mother-in-law. She cried and reflected, so hopefully such things won't happen again in the future. Now I decided to apologize to the chef for messing up the cooking. With a wry smile, the chef forgave me, saying the real problem was with the mother-in-law. Then we enjoyed the dishes and the cake-cutting ceremony took place without any issues. Of course, my mother-in-law wasn't present at the event, because she was taken away by the police on suspicion of kidnapping. It seems one of the relatives had quietly reported it. Good job, unknown relative. Somehow the ceremony ended without any major problems. After the wedding, now it was my husband's turn to apologize to me.
Sorry I couldn't do anything. You're so important to me all the time. I always say I'll protect you no matter what happens. I'm a failure as a husband.
He feels down. No, that's not true. I'm always being helped by you. Please, stay by my side from now on, my wonderful husband. I embraced my husband. We spent a passionate night that day. Then a few months later, my sister-in-law and her husband consulted a lawyer and even prepared legal documents for the estrangement. Although my mother-in-law was supposed to be sentenced to at least 3 years in prison for kidnapping, it seems that the baby's parents offered a settlement considering the baby was unharmed. After being released from detention, my mother-in-law signed the documents for estrangement and ended up losing her entire family. It's her own fault. As for my sister-in-law and her husband, they seem to be living happily now that they've cut ties with my mother-in-law. It seems my scolding from that day had an impact, as they come to visit me once a month now and consult me about various things. While I'm happy to be relied upon, I wish they'd decide on furniture placement by themselves. And as for my mother-in-law, well, she's been living alone and lonely on a pension since then. It seems she only has stray cats as friends now. 3 years later, my husband and I, along with my sister-in-law and her husband, were blessed with children. This is also thanks to cutting ties with that person. I laughed with my sister-in-law and her husband. I hope this happy life continues forever. With that thought in mind, I stroked the white cat sleeping contentedly on the veranda.
When my mom and in-laws visited after the twins' birth, my hubby dissed the food, craving sushi. I revealed my mom made it. The result was amusing.
My name is Luna, and I'm 25 years old. I've been dating my husband Caleb for a year, and he proposed to me. "Will you marry me?" he said, following the textbook with cheesy lines and the snap of the ring. But I was happy. From the start, our relationship was with marriage in mind, and we both idealized having 2 children, 1 boy and 1 girl, once married. "Let's continue to support each other in household chores and childcare," Caleb said, and I was relieved, and so we started our married life. "What a blessing to be married to you, Luna. Living with someone you love is really wonderful, isn't it?" I think I was halfway lost in a dream with those sweet textbook perfect words. But the dreamland was nothing but a facade. My sweet and comfortable life turned into something pitiful. 6 months into our marriage, I found out I was pregnant. And it's twins. "Seriously? A boy and a girl twins? Fraternal twins, huh? That's like the perfect family all at once." He was excitedly saying that, but as my morning sickness worsened, I became increasingly irritable. "If you look sick all the time, it's hard for me to stay upbeat, you know." He said it in a very cold tone. Even if you say that, my health really isn't good. Even just talking like this feels like a chore, and what's more, no one understands that. I was devastated. Even when the morning sickness subsided, next came the pregnancy toxemia. Headaches, ringing in the ears, swelling. Even though it's my own body, it feels like I have no control over it at all. But when I mention it, Caleb gets more and more cranky. "Ringing in the ears and swelling? Do those things really happen? Sounds like something old folks get. Maybe it's because you're lazy. You should move more and be a healthier pregnant woman, right?" What even is a healthy pregnant woman? I didn't expect my health to change so much during pregnancy. I couldn't focus on work, so I asked to have lunch early. But being alone at home made me feel lonely, and I wished someone could be with me. But when we were together, Caleb was always sulking and complaining, which made me feel unsettled too. Then one day, a coworker brought me some snacks and visited. My coworker, who had been caring for me since I was struggling with morning sickness, was kind, and I spent a comforting moment with them, which was a rare occasion.
I bought a cake. With your friends here, I was worried you haven't been able to entertain them properly.
Recently, Caleb, who used to always come back late at night and work on weekends, suddenly came home early. Huh, wasn't it a weekend shift? As I was surprised, Caleb dramatically shrugged his shoulders.
No, but I was worried about you, Luna. If your friends are visiting, you should relax. Leave the housework to me, and let's take it easy together.
And even though I often feel dizzy, he doesn't ignore me. He brings a blanket, covers me, sits beside me, and massages my arms. My colleagues were completely envious, and I was also deeply impressed, wishing for such a wonderful husband. It's completely different from usual. I accidentally let my true feelings out, but...
Huh? Did you say something?
He asked me with a confident smile. Nothing. I had no choice but to reply. So Caleb was a man who only put on the facade of an ideal husband when others were around. We'll always cooperate with each other in housework and childcare. Even though it was Caleb who said it, it seemed like such a promise didn't exist in his mind. Without others' eyes on him, he wouldn't lift a finger to do any housework.
But you're just lounging around at home, without even working, right?
When I asked him to help a little, he was irritated. Well, if pregnancy weren't so tough and I felt better, I'd be more active, wouldn't I? But every day is tough. Have you ever thought about how hard it is to feel terrible all the time? Even when you sleep or wake up? Even when I protested, it was dismissed as being too dramatic. I wished I could have gone back to my hometown to give birth, but my parents lived far away and are taking care of my grandmother. Plus, since it's a really rural area, being a first-time mom with twins and feeling unwell, I couldn't move from my home, which was close to medical facilities. In the end, I hardly felt refreshed and energetic. Mostly, I went through childbirth feeling unwell, and then struggled with childcare while still suffering from symptoms of discomfort. Raising twins, time melts away. There's no convenient way to feed, sleep, and change diapers for two people at the same time, and there's no end to the number of problems that can occur simultaneously. But before I knew it, I was falling asleep while nursing, getting woken up by crying, unable to gather enough strength in my arms to hold them. It was all a mess. Yet Caleb seemed oblivious to all of this. In fact, he hardly ever came home. And when he did, he just yelled at me for the children's crying, and didn't move himself. It was unusual for him to come home during dinner time.
Ah, I'm tired again today. Hurry up and make dinner. I'm starving.
He says, as if it's obvious, plopping down on the sofa. But I haven't prepared anything. Caleb got angry at my response.
Why?
There's nothing. I haven't been able to sleep properly for days because of the children's crying at night. I can't even remember when I last ate. But there's no point in even thinking about dinner for a husband who doesn't know if he'll eat.
Just make something with what's available for now, quickly.
Despite the child crying, Caleb ordered me without offering any help.
Don't let them cry. You're their mother.
I was in the midst of the most difficult days of my life, far from the ideal married life I had imagined.
Hey, Luna, I told them we'll be coming over tomorrow. They said it's for a baby celebration, so let's get some sushi or something.
Caleb suddenly mentioned tomorrow's plans, even though it was already past the closing time for reservations.
But it'll look bad if we go empty-handed, Luna. Quickly prepare something.
I panicked at being told so casually. Wait, Caleb, what do you mean prepare something? We don't have many ingredients and I can't go shopping alone with the twins. Please help me. I wished he wouldn't make it sound so easy without understanding how difficult it is to go shopping with twins in tow. But...
Ugh. I messed up big time. Why did I even marry someone like you? Seriously, can't you do anything? Do you have any motivation at all?
He said it dismissively, and then Caleb plugged his ears and went to sleep. The next morning, while I was bustling around taking care of the twins, he had already gone somewhere. Is it a lie? I was stunned by Caleb's absence. No matter what I do, I can't stand not getting even a little help. What should I do? As I rocked my daughter asleep in the baby bed and nursed my son, what's in the fridge? I found myself dozing off while planning the shopping list. Luna, are you here? In between the sounds of my mother's voice, I awoke with a start when I heard a chime at the front door. Oh no! I hurriedly greeted my mother. Mom, I fell asleep. I have to go shopping. And my mom and dad are coming over. Sushi, I haven't even ordered it yet. Upon meeting my mother, tears streamed down, and I realized my voice was trembling. Calm down. Come here for a moment. Seeing me in tears and completely flustered, my mother told me to lie down on the sofa. Leave the rest to me. Just get some sleep. You look terrible. You've already got dark circles under your eyes. At that moment, my in-laws arrived, and upon seeing my face, my mother-in-law angrily started making a phone call. Meanwhile, my father-in-law held my crying daughter, soothing her gently.
Luna, could it be that these kids often cry a lot? I was worried because Caleb was also a crybaby when he was little.
My father-in-law smiling kindly, and my mother, standing in the kitchen, began to unwrap the large package they brought with them. In addition, after finishing her phone call, my mother-in-law, holding my sleeping son, said, It must have been tough doing it all alone, and gently patted my shoulder, as if comforting me. It was the first time in a month or so, since I had been discharged from the maternity hospital, that I was free from taking care of the twins, from housework, and from my husband's petty complaints. With an indescribable sense of relief and overwhelming exhaustion, new tears welled up in my eyes and wouldn't stop. Thank you. Eventually, just as the good smell of soup started wafting from the kitchen, Caleb stood at the door, returning from his outing.
Oh, everyone's already here. Perfect timing. Luna, you seem excited. What did you make? Let's eat.
As we approached the table, where preparations were underway, he grimaced.
What's up, Luna? You said you were going to make something fancy. You're not seriously making something this cheap-looking, are you? Can't believe it. I told you not to push yourself, but you're trying too hard. Come on, just throw away this bland homemade food. By the way, what about the sushi? You said you were going to order takeout, right?
Caleb looked around, searching for the sushi.
I'm sorry, Mom. I wanted you to come to the city and try some delicious sushi. Luna has been saying that her taste buds have been off lately, so I think she made this bland dish. Oh, let me help you clear the table,
he said, as if playing the role of a good husband. I was amazed by Caleb's attitude, which seemed to suggest that everything was going well. At the same time, something bubbled up from the bottom of my stomach. Caleb, did my mother really cook something this awful? I glared straight at Caleb. Caleb instantly froze, his face showing that he knew he was in trouble.
Luna's mom is a nutritionist, you know. It seems she's been making lots of low-sodium, additive-free dishes for Luna, who's been feeling unwell lately.
Caleb faltered under the condemning gaze of my father-in-law. This humble, plain, homemade dish. I'm sorry. Did it seem so meager that it needed to be thrown away, Caleb? My mother sighs, and my mother-in-law looks at Caleb with eyes that seem to be on fire. With angry stares from all sides, Caleb finally began to make up for his blunder.
It seems like I made a little mistake. That's impressive, huh? It feels like even the nutrition is calculated perfectly. Yeah, it's perfect.
My mother, of course, did not accept the compliment, and my parents-in-law's anger gauge seemed to go up even higher.
Don't try to cover up with half-hearted excuses. Where have you been all this time? What have you been doing?
Surely, if it weren't for the children sleeping soundly, this would have been a major scolding. My father-in-law's voice was kept low so as not to wake the baby, but it was stern enough. Like a frog stared down by a snake, Caleb broke out in a cold sweat.
I heard you haven't been participating in household chores or childcare at all. Not to mention you're adding more burden with your antics today. Aren't you embarrassed?
With each question, my father-in-law cornered Caleb more and more.
Huh? Oh no, that's just Luna's imagination, probably.
Caleb was desperately trying to escape, but the ones in front of him were his own parents. They knew him inside and out. My mother-in-law dropped into Caleb's palms the earplugs that were now lying in his bedroom.
Where are the parents who sleep with earplugs in their ears because their children are crying too loud?
My father-in-law's eyes widened in surprise.
Well, wait, Dad. Hold on, it's not like that. This isn't about that. You're so shameless. I told you I heard.
As Caleb stumbled over his words, my father-in-law produced what looked like a glasses case, but it was actually a voice recorder. From there, the exchange between Caleb and me from the previous day began to play.
Noisy. Ugh, so noisy. Really, I screwed up. Seriously, marrying someone like you was a mistake. You really can't do anything, can you? Do you even have any motivation? Ugh, why would something like that, Luna?
Unbelievable, I said to Caleb. He looked at me with eyes that said, I've never seen anything like this before. Caleb gets upset if I'm sick and miss an introduction or forget something. So since I was pregnant, I've been recording our conversations and replaying them when my mind is working a little better. Yes, I was distracted by the headaches and tinnitus when I suffered from it. But Caleb hates that kind of thing. So from about the time the morning sickness subsided, when Caleb would start talking, I would record the conversation. As Luna's mom, I care about her, but it's hard to watch her struggle with twins. Feeling unwell and not getting help from her partner, who keeps complaining. I was shocked to see her face after such a long time. She looked bruised and swollen, with dark circles under her eyes. She doesn't even have the strength to hold the baby properly. She wobbles when she walks. It seems like she needs hospitalization, even though she doesn't look too bad. A small scream came from the back of Caleb's throat at my mother's anger.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. Even if you're a parent, please enunciate properly. Caleb was cut off sharply by my angry mother, leaving him speechless.
Luna's mother is right. I have already made arrangements for her to be admitted to a hospital I know. Once you've enjoyed the heartfelt meal, take Luna to the hospital. Make sure to take good care of the children.
Upon hearing my father-in-law's words, Caleb visibly turned pale.
No way. That's impossible. There's no way I could do that. I've never done it before. But Luna, it's not that bad, is it? I'll start paying more attention to your health from now on, so why don't you stay home?
Caleb says with a hint of desperation, but he's cut off by my mother. Did Luna say the same thing to you? Even though she's never taken care of twins, there's no way she can do it, right?
What? That kind of reasoning makes sense.
Caleb realizes his mistake and tries to cover his mouth, but it's already too late. Yeah, that's right. There's no way that reasoning would hold, right? Because she's the mother, it's natural for her to take care of things. Didn't you say that? Then it's the same thing. You're the father, right? Now who should take care of the kids while the mother is in the hospital? Like a school teacher questioning a student, my mother cornered Caleb.
Me?
There was no way I could have responded otherwise.
Well, it's understandable that you can't suddenly take time off work, so your mother said she'd help during the day. She'll stay overnight just in case. But fundamentally, you need to manage on your own. Dad? Don't make that pitiful voice. You, think carefully. Your work, including commuting and breaks, is roughly 10 hours a day. Childcare, on the other hand, is 24 hours, no days off. Moreover, if we compare childcare to work, it's like having normal duties with unpredictable additional tasks, and even dealing with troublesome complaints. You can't set your own pace, and there's no time for breaks, let alone meals or sleep. Considering Luna's condition, it's safe to assume that she might even have the flu.
My father-in-law's explanation was so spot on that I couldn't help but be impressed. Exactly. My life for the past month has been a perfect match for my father-in-law's analogy.
What are you saying? Stop whining. You should experience it firsthand. You're just doing what you used to push onto Luna alone. Are you really that unwilling despite being a father?
When Caleb, with teary eyes, was admonished by my father-in-law, my mother also backed him up. If you don't like it, then you can't call yourselves a married couple anymore. Luna, it's okay to divorce and come back. Once there's a baby and things get lively, the house will also become lively.
Divorce? I won't be able to see my adorable grandchild anymore. Are you really going to be so unfilial?
During this impressive exchange, Caleb looked pale and broke into a cold sweat, showing a busy range of facial expressions.
Luna.
Caleb looked at me with teary eyes, but I had reached my limit too. I think you will have an easier time than I do, because you don't have to take care of me while I'm in the hospital. Isn't it a bit easier to not have to cook for a husband who's always late and just complains about small stuff?
Ugh.
Seeing Caleb make a strange noise, I chuckled. A little bit of payback would be nice. And at the hospital, where I was hospitalized, I finally got a good night's sleep after a long time. When I woke up, almost a whole day had passed, and I was surprised that I still felt like I could sleep. During my hospital stay, I learned that breastfeeding wasn't a hardship, but a way to nurture affection, as my mother-in-law brought the children every day. Meanwhile, Caleb was running around with my mother-in-law's constant support.
Luna, when are you coming back?
With the twins in his arms, who couldn't stop crying, Caleb said,
I need you.
In a way I hadn't heard since before we got married. You shouldn't make them cry. You're their father. When I said that as a retort, Caleb rolled his eyes. After rest and treatment, my health improved considerably. When I got back home with my mother-in-law's thankful but strict help, Caleb slowly learned to handle the twins, even though it was a bit awkward. And following advice from our families, I had Caleb sign a divorce paper at the start of the year, just in case. If anything happens, we'll divorce right away, and I'll go back to my parents' house and claim compensation from Caleb. I hope to continue living in a way that avoids the need to submit those papers.
My bullying mother-in-law. Christmas, steak for us, but you're an outsider, so eat grass at home. Oblivious, I said, okay, leading to her downfall.
During Christmas, let's go to a high-end steak restaurant as a family. You're an outsider, so stay home and eat grass or something. My mother-in-law quickly changes from a Christ-like figure to a demon. My mother-in-law is quite the hot and cold type, but it's okay, since she kindly suggested I eat grass. I'll go along with it. Maybe then she'll like me even more than she does now. I'm looking forward to it. My name is Nancy. I'm 38, and I'm often described as absent-minded without realizing it. People also ask me if I'm awake a lot. My eyes are open, though, but lately I've started thinking, well, maybe both are true. This is a story from when I was still in my 20s. I decided to marry a guy named Ivan. His far-fetched lines of, I want to be with you forever, and I want you by my side just didn't cut it for me, and I went through with his proposals 3 times. The final proposal was, please marry me. He should have just said that from the start. With the marriage settled, it was time to meet each other's parents. I headed to his parents' house, feeling nervous the whole way. Oh my, and you are? Let's see, Mary?
Mom, it's Nancy.
Opening her mouth, my mother-in-law mistakenly called me by the wrong name. I'm sorry about that. It's just that Ivan's previous girlfriend was such a nice girl, I got confused. Huh?
You don't need to say stuff like that.
With a smile, my mother-in-law hints at the existence of his ex-girlfriend while my husband panics. I was the only one dumbfounded, as my father-in-law remained silent.
I'm sorry, Nancy, for making you feel uncomfortable.
No, it's okay. I'm not bothered by it. Your ex-girlfriend seems like a nice person.
Yeah.
My husband seemed like he wanted to confirm if I was genuinely not upset with his reaction. If it were still ongoing with his ex, that would be a different story. But just a name mix-up, it's not a big deal, right? More than that, I was worried about something else. Despite being still relatively young, could my mother-in-law be showing early signs of dementia? Afterward, my mother-in-law kept calling me by his ex's name, and each time my husband would explode in anger. In my mind, my mother-in-law's cognitive decline seemed to be becoming more certain. I hope she lives a long and healthy life. And so I watched over my mother-in-law like a saint, even at my own expense. Furthermore, my mother-in-law, "As a bride who has been allowed into our home, you should be grateful to us for permitting this marriage. Can a girl who seems so weak-minded like you support my son?" Being pressured in various ways like that, every time my husband could respond,
"Don't talk like you're in those old-fashioned dramatic mother-in-law movies."
He would shout at her and apologize to me. As for me, I get more excited thinking, oh, this is like a drama between a daughter-in-law and a mother-in-law. Am I being stupid? What's wrong with that? Peace is nice. Although the marriage was accepted, just before the wedding, my mother-in-law said, "If you two won't live with us, then I won't approve of the marriage." She started saying things like that. According to my husband, he's the apple of his parents' eye, and my mother-in-law seems unable to let him go. So it seems my mother-in-law can't tolerate me stealing her son away, and she's trying various tactics to break off the engagement. My husband has been directly told several times to call off the marriage, and there have been times after greeting me when my mother-in-law sent photos of my husband with his ex-girlfriend to me. "It's like they were made for each other," she said, going as far as to call on the phone just to say that. I kept quiet about it because I was afraid my parents would oppose the marriage if they found out. However, I would always inform my husband, and each time he would lecture his mother. My husband explicitly stated that this was harassment. I was starting to feel worn out by all of this, but because I loved my husband, I had no intention of calling off the marriage. My husband told me that the harassment would get worse if I moved in with her, and even as someone absent-minded, I couldn't imagine that. My father-in-law wasn't someone who would cause trouble, so the issue was solely with my mother-in-law. Even if something happened, my husband would surely help me. I believed that everything would work out somehow. With that faith, I decided to move in with my in-laws. A few days after moving in, something happened one day. "Nancy, I'm sorry." With that oddly sweet voice, my mother-in-law came rushing over. That day, my husband was at work and my father-in-law was out with an old friend. "What's wrong, Mom?" The laundry. Saying so, my mother-in-law pointed to the backyard. Suddenly, I noticed that the laundry I had hung out was lying on the ground, covered in mud, with a clothesline pole. "It's such nice weather, and I got dizzy from the heat. I bumped into it, and it ended up like this." Though her voice sounded like she was crying, my mother-in-law's eyes were dry as a bone. I was immediately concerned for my mother-in-law. Seeing her scoff at my suggestion that she take a break because she might have heat stroke, I finally realized it was deliberate harassment. Every time my mother-in-law and I were alone, she would repeat such things. She broke my glasses by accidentally stepping on them, just to know it happened 3 times. Another time, she used a toothbrush, which I had unknowingly left on the stand, to clean the sliminess from the drain, claiming, "The bristles were spread out, so I thought it was for cleaning." After several rounds of cleaning the drain, she confesses, making it particularly malicious. I ended up brushing my teeth. No wonder the bristles of the toothbrush, which was supposed to be new, quickly spread out. However, since I had just had my wisdom teeth removed, I convinced myself that my brushing technique had somehow become strange. I reported the clear harassment to my husband as well. My husband also complains to my mother-in-law, but she stubbornly insists. "It was just an accident, so there's nothing to be done about it." At first, even I, with my naive and somewhat foolish nature, believed in the accident theory, but I've come to understand that it's not common to suffer from dizziness in the yard or step on my glasses so frequently. I finally get it. This is my mother-in-law's hobby. Gradually, my mother-in-law and husband started battling over the harassment towards me. Finally, even my father-in-law intervened, saying,
"You shouldn't bully your daughter-in-law,"
as he tried to calm my mother-in-law. Did that not sit well with her? One morning, I found bee larvae packed tightly in my mouthwash for some reason. Bee larvae. Essentially maggots. I, who detest insects, screamed. My husband, worried, called for a family meeting right away. Until now, my mother-in-law had bullied me behind my husband's and father-in-law's backs, but from this point on, she boldly harassed me without worrying about their reactions. But I didn't want to lose so easily either. Bring on the bees or earthworms, or anything else for that matter. That's how I felt. The truth is, my husband had proposed the idea of kicking out my mother-in-law, but that option wasn't available to me. That was because of my own experiences. I remember when my mother, after being cheated on by my father, was kicked out of the house with me, a young child, without understanding why. Now she's remarried and living peacefully. At that time, I wondered how we, who had no home, would live from then on. That's what made me anxious. I didn't want to kick anyone out like that. Fortunately, my husband, and lately, even my father-in-law, has been somewhat supportive. I'm not alone by any means. I was determined to endure anything and everything until my mother-in-law accepted me as her daughter-in-law. That's what I thought. Then one day, with Christmas approaching, my mother-in-law, oddly cheerful, says something like this. "Living together means we don't have to travel back and forth, so do you feel sad and lonely about missing out on the Christmas spirit?" When asked if it's lonely, I honestly don't understand at all. Without the hassle of having to go back and forth, isn't it super easy and fun? Thinking like that, I just give a vague agreement with a yes, indeed. "Right? That's why I came up with it. Since we're all together, let's enjoy an event during the Christmas holidays." Oh, that sounds great. When my mother-in-law suggested an event to me, I couldn't help but wonder if she might actually like me a little. It filled me with a faint hope. "During the Christmas holidays, we'll go to a high-end steak restaurant as a family. You're an outsider, so you can eat grass at home." My mother-in-law's cheerful expression suddenly turned cold, like a different person halfway through. Just when I thought I understood, it hit me. If it's grass, then it's okay to eat it. Maybe it's even better than bee larvae. Perhaps it's a luxury ingredient. Is this a Christmas event? Maybe my mother-in-law actually likes me a bit after all. I enthusiastically replied with a yes. It seemed like my mother-in-law was puzzled by my excitement and even clicked her tongue, but maybe she's just the hot and cold type. And she probably feels embarrassed because I'm happy. We celebrated Christmas with no idea that there was a tremendous misunderstanding between myself and my mother-in-law. On the day we were supposed to go to the high-end sushi restaurant as a family, my mother-in-law said, "Your father and Ivan are technically invited, but I haven't made a reservation for you, so absolutely do not come. Don't tell anyone about this," she emphasized. It seems that my husband's shift is scheduled all night that day, so he's heading straight to the restaurant from work. My father-in-law and mother-in-law are going from their shopping destination to the steakhouse. And according to her plan, I'm supposed to do housework first, and then meet them at the restaurant. Since everyone is meeting there, it shouldn't be a problem if I'm not there, as long as my mother-in-law comes up with some excuse. I guess that's the idea. While I'm a little envious of the fancy steak, there's grass on this side too. Maybe my mother-in-law also wants to have a meal with just the family once in a while. Thinking that way, I followed my mother-in-law's instructions and stayed home. At the time when everyone should be eating steak, suddenly my husband returned home.
"Nancy, why didn't you tell me you were being bullied? I was so surprised because you weren't there."
Huh? I stood there dumbfounded at my husband's pale face. Perhaps he thought I was alone at home crying. Even my husband was taken aback when he saw my carefree expression. Then my mother-in-law appeared from behind my husband.
Really, Nancy, you're so inconsiderate. We had such good steak. Why would you suddenly want to leave?
She appeared outraged. At that moment, I thought my mother-in-law's face was turning serious, but then it turned pale, and her mouth hung open.
Nancy, what are you eating?
What? It's just grass. You told me to eat grass, so I made a salad with the herbs from over there.
Those aren't from my potted plants.
Oh, I see. Since they were so well taken care of, they were indeed delicious. I'm delighted to think that you were raising them for me to eat. Thank you for the meal. As my enraged mother-in-law glared at me, I lowered my head, while my husband burst into laughter. Even my usually serious father-in-law was laughing. I wonder what I did wrong. Oh well, it's fine.
Oh, wait, Nancy, what about that cactus over there? It's completely gone. What happened to it?
Oh, it was delicious. It was such a fine specimen of a barrel cactus that I made soup, steak, and various other dishes with it. As I proudly showed off the lineup on the dining table, my mother-in-law stood there speechless. My husband seemed to be laughing so much that he was having trouble breathing, and my father-in-law was desperately trying to stifle his laughter. Did you know that cacti are good for preventing wrinkles and age spots? Mom, you always use skincare products that claim to prevent wrinkles and age spots, right? Is that also made from cactus juice? Oh, and it's supposed to reduce swelling too, right? Remember when I mentioned my swollen ankles the other day? You remembered, didn't you? I'm glad. Feeling as if I had been acknowledged by my mother-in-law, I happily expressed my gratitude for the benefits of the cactus and to my mother-in-law for providing it. However, my mother-in-law didn't even crack a smile. In fact, she seemed so lifeless, it was almost like she was fading away. I wonder why. My husband is laughing so hard, he looks like a red-boiled octopus.
That cactus was a gift from my pottery class teacher. It was his first gift to me. How could you do this to me?
Huh? Ivan and my father-in-law froze, wearing puzzled expressions at my mother-in-law's words. In that moment, she inadvertently covered her mouth.
Wasn't your pottery class teacher a man? And a pretty young one at that,
Ivan remarked.
Hasn't she been wearing a lot of flashy clothes lately?
My father-in-law also gave my mother-in-law a stern look. Well, let's see. But my mother-in-law's gaze seemed to wander aimlessly.
That's not it. It's not some scandalous affair. It's just that, well, being guided from behind by someone young and handsome makes your heart race, doesn't it?
For a moment, my mother-in-law looked completely girlish, causing both men to frown deeply in disapproval.
Huh? Mother, are you seriously falling for a guy my age? Are you guys close enough to exchange gifts?
My husband's words made my mother-in-law vigorously shake her head.
Were you making cookies the other day to give to him?
At my father-in-law's words, my mother-in-law visibly flinched. She forced a smile with very little conviction. It seemed she couldn't even make excuses anymore in the face of her suddenly exposed secret. My husband in a detached tone.
I really don't want to hear about my mom's love life. Ugh, it's gross.
He raised his voice. My mother-in-law blushed crimson, tears welling up in embarrassment as she glared at me.
Hey, if Nancy hadn't eaten the cactus, none of this would have happened. It's your fault. You no good wife.
She grabbed my collar while yelling. What did you say? But I did eat the cactus like you told me to. Don't blame me for this. I don't understand what I did wrong. This was actually the first time I had stood up to my mother-in-law's abuse. I glared at her with all the anger I had. But my husband and father-in-law were once again rolling with laughter.
Seriously, Nancy, she's just teasing you. She didn't mean for you to actually eat cactus.
Huh? My husband's observation left me dumbfounded, and my mother-in-law's expression turned to one of utter despair.
It's been a while since I've laughed like this. You're no match for Nancy. I'll forgive you for getting infatuated with a younger guy, but as I've said many times, stop the harassment against Nancy. You're just embarrassing yourself, being immature.
After being reprimanded by my father-in-law, my mother-in-law clenched her teeth, tightly gripped her fists, and shook her shoulders.
Hey, I really don't like seeing Nancy getting bullied like this every day. I didn't do anything because Nancy says she didn't want to. To be honest, I even want you to leave, Mom. Can you please keep your distance from us both?
Finally, my husband made his frustration with my mother-in-law very clear. Instinctively, I said, "Please, don't worry, Mom. I really don't mind at all." I tried to follow up with that, but it seems that wasn't enough. It seemed like my mother-in-law wanted me to be hurt or sad even just a little bit. Realizing that I wasn't affected by my mother-in-law's bullying at all,
It's impossible to corner such an unreasonable daughter-in-law. How frustrating.
she burst into tears. I'm not quite sure what triggered it, but she seemed to have bought it. My mother-in-law said,
I don't care if you feel lonely without me.
With that, she stormed out of the house. Both my husband and father-in-law,
If she feels lonely, she'll come back. She won't come back.
My father-in-law spoke about my mother-in-law as if she were some stray cat or something, without even trying to chase after her. This is too much. Isn't it pitiful for her? Filled with anger, I went after my mother-in-law. But what hurt the most was that the two people I thought of as family didn't come after us.
I don't need you to accompany me.
With a grand gesture, she waved away my hand and left. It seems I unintentionally led my mother-in-law to her final destination, and thereafter she never returned home. And thus, without my realizing it, I achieved victory in my battle with my mother-in-law and brought it to a close. After that, while my husband, father-in-law, and I were living peacefully, we received a letter from my mother-in-law. Inside was a divorce paper with a bold comment.
This is the last chapter of my life as a woman. I will devote myself to the pottery teacher without regrets. It will be too late for you to regret losing me.
My husband and father-in-law burst into laughter at this, saying,
We hope she won't have any regrets in her last days.
But 3 months after the divorce, my mother-in-law suddenly came to our house and pleaded,
I've been dumped, so I want to remarry.
Getting turned down was expected, but this additional request was unexpected. My father-in-law laughed a lot and refused, saying,
I want to be free of you for the last time in my life.
After that, my mother-in-law never gave up and came to our house several times, but the results were always the same, and after about a year, she finally seemed to give up. Meanwhile, my husband and I had 2 children. The first child was a boy, but as a mother, there were many things about boys that I often didn't understand. He seemed to get into mischief from time to time, but my husband kept a close eye on him, so we managed to avoid any major incidents. Now, both my son and the daughter born afterward have grown up so well, even more responsible than me in some aspects. The whole family accompanies me on shopping trips, worrying about me. I once went out to buy milk, and for some reason came back with mackerel and bread. I forgot the milk and left. My dignity as a mother was nowhere to be found. My father-in-law also adores the children tremendously and even jokes.
Thanks for supporting Nancy's absent-mindedness.
Despite everything, we spend each day lively, bright, and joyously. Well, here I go again, giving my all to motherhood today.
On the wedding day, the bride cancelled. Groom's mom apologized for her low status. The bride then appeared, saying, I've been here all along.
If I make my wife take the blame and get divorced, I'll get a huge alimony. Then, I'll marry you. In the meantime, I'll squeeze as much money as I can out of her.
Watching this video from the dashcam, I was frozen. My fiancé was confessing his real reason for wanting to marry me, all while laughing casually. He was talking to the woman in the passenger seat, his mistress. I was trembling in disbelief, but made up my mind. I won't forgive him. I'll show him a thing or two. The showdown will be on Sunday, the day of our wedding reception. My name is Lisa. I'm in my 30s, and I work at a fashion company. I'm doing well now, but I once became a recluse. My parents died in a car accident during high school, and I was too shocked to go to school. I stopped going out entirely and eventually dropped out. Afterward, I moved to Germany with my aunt and uncle. In a completely different environment, they showered me with love, and eventually, I became able to live normally again. To ensure I could find a job, I took the high school equivalency exam and passed. I decided to become independent when I came of age and returned to the US to find work. I got a job at an apparel company, my favorite industry. Initially, I worked as a sales staff member, sometimes using my language skills to assist foreign tourists. Now, I manage the area's branches. My best friend Sally, a colleague who joined around the same time as me, has always been there for me. We often went out for drinks together. One day, after work, we went out to eat as usual and unexpectedly ran into someone.
Hey, isn't that you?
Huh? I turned around to see Mason, a classmate from high school. Mason, long time no see. How have you been?
I'm out drinking with some coworkers. What about you?
I'm with a friend.
That's nice. I was a bit worried about you back then. Wanna join us for a drink?
I don't want to impose on your colleagues.
They're all pretty easygoing. Don't worry about it. I work for a trading company now. Here's my business card.
I work for a fashion company, I said as we exchanged business cards.
I remember you always liked fashion.
How do you know that?
Well, I heard some things. Come on, let's talk over a drink.
Okay, let me ask my friend. When I asked Sally, she agreed, saying, "Meeting an old classmate again sounds like something out of a movie. This could be something interesting." I secretly hoped so too, since I'd always had a slight crush on him in high school. He was athletic, the center of attention and everyone's idol. But after my parents' accident and dropping out, we lost contact. Meeting him here was a shock, especially since he remembered me. The guys from Mason's company were great conversationalists, making the night enjoyable. As we parted, he said,
"Let's drink again, just the two of us next time."
This led to us seeing each other more often. He asked about high school.
What happened after you stopped coming to school? I was shocked.
My parents died in a car accident, and it was too hard for me to go to school.
That must have been tough. How did you manage?
My parents left enough money for me to live comfortably, and my aunt and uncle took good care of me.
I'm glad to hear that. It's really nice to see you again. Actually, I had a crush on you in high school.
Really?
Yeah, I know it's a bit late to tell you, but yeah. I've never forgotten you since you stopped coming to school. It's a bit embarrassing to admit, but will you date me with marriage in mind?
Are you serious?
I wouldn't joke about this.
It's hard to believe. We barely talked in high school.
You always quietly observed everything. It made you stand out to me. So, what'd he say?
He blushed as he asked me. Yes, I'd love to, I answered.
I'm so relieved,
he said with a laugh. That's how our relationship started. A few months later, we began preparing for our wedding. First, I met his mother. His father had passed away a few years ago, and now he lived with his mother. Nervously, I introduced myself. Hello, I'm Lisa, Mason's girlfriend. His mother gave me a hard look and started asking questions.
How did you two meet?
We were high school classmates and recently reconnected.
Oh, you went to the same high school. I don't remember your name. Did you attend the graduation?
No. Actually, I dropped out.
What?
That's when Mason intervened.
Mom, she had a lot going on at that time and left school.
So she dropped out? So you didn't graduate, Lisa?
That's right. But I tried to mention that I had obtained a high school equivalency diploma, but she continued probing.
So what do you do for a living?
I work at an apparel company.
I see. I guess that doesn't require a high school diploma.
His mother assumed my job was just customer service. She clearly looked down on me for being a dropout, and I was taken aback. Not noticing my reaction, she continued.
Well, my son went to a prestigious university, so I thought he'd marry someone with a similar background. You surprised me.
She kept making condescending comments.
Will you quit your job after marriage? Your salary probably isn't that high, right? You could stay home and help around the house.
What kind of selfish remark is that? I plan to keep working. When I said that, she made a puzzled face.
If you don't make much money, it would be more helpful if you did the housework.
I love my job. And my salary isn't that bad, I responded.
What are you talking about? It can't be much compared to my son's salary at a trading company. You can work until you have kids, but you'll need to do the housework.
She spoke as if it were a given that we would live together after the wedding. Based on this interaction, it seemed clear that his mother and I were not going to get along. She'd treat me like a maid if we lived together. After a rough introduction, we left, but his mother continued to interfere with our wedding plans.
Since your parents aren't around, you must not know much about weddings. You didn't finish high school.
She mocked me for being a dropout and pushed for a grand ceremony, unlike the small, intimate wedding I wanted.
What are you talking about? We come from an old, established family with many relatives. Mason is the eldest son and a graduate of a top university. It's only natural to have a grand wedding. See, that's the problem with a dropout who has no parents,
she said, already full of spite. He didn't even try to defend me. So the wedding preparations began not as planned. After several meetings, it was 1 month until the wedding. I was already exhausted from dealing with his mother. Seeing my state, my friend Sally suggested,
let's go shopping.
Most of the preparations were done, and I needed a breather. The next weekend, we decided to go to a newly opened outlet mall. I would drive. I enjoy driving and use it to refresh myself on weekends. My beloved car is a Q Fiat. It's an Italian car with an option to automatically record everything inside the car during drives. After a drive, I enjoy watching the recordings with friends. But lately, I hadn't been able to go for drives because I was busy with wedding preparations. It had been a while since Sally and I went shopping, and we were excited to visit a new shopping mall. I was so excited that I arrived early at our meeting place. With some time to kill, I played around with the navigation system and pressed the history button, where an unfamiliar name, Moonlight Hotel, appeared. What is this? I wondered. I had lent the car to Mason recently for a drive with friends. The history was from the day I was trying on wedding dresses. Mason didn't come because he wanted to be surprised on the wedding day. Did he stop by this hotel with his friends? Sally arrived just then, saying,
I'm here.
So I decided to check later. Despite having fun shopping, the hotel history nagged at me. Back home, I checked the history again and looked up the hotel on my phone. It was a hotel for couples in the red light district. I nervously checked the dashcam footage and saw Mason with a woman I didn't know. She had long hair, perfect makeup, and looked a bit younger than me.
Where should we go today?
He asked.
I want some good food,
She replied in a sweet voice.
Let's go to that Italian place and then the hotel nearby.
Okay,
She said sweetly. It was clearly an affair. I was shocked as the video played on.
Are you really getting married? You said you'd be with me.
The woman pouted.
I planned to, but I ran into her.
What do you mean?
She's got a lot of money.
What the? A shocking truth slipped out from him.
She inherited a fortune from her parents. I knew she was well off, but didn't know the amount. It's enough to never worry about money. We're taking millions of dollars. Isn't that amazing?
So you're marrying her for money? What about me?
Don't worry. I'll divorce her eventually and get a big alimony. Then we'll be together. Meanwhile, I'll take as much as I can from her.
You're bad, but I can wait,
she said, smiling. They both laughed. My whole body went cold. I was shocked that he had another woman, but more than that, the person I admired was planning to marry me just for my money. I was devastated by my naivety. Usually, I'd work through any illness, but this time I was too shocked to do anything. Sally visited me and I told her everything.
What a jerk! Dump him immediately.
It's good you found out before marrying him, she said, furious. Yeah, I'm glad I found out, but I'm so angry. Not just about the affair, but that he's after my money. And his mother looks down on me for not finishing high school.
Yeah, we need to get back at them.
But the wedding is only a month away. Yeah, I know. At that moment, an idea flashed through my mind. I looked into Sally's eyes and whispered to her, Will you help me? We started planning to give them a taste of their own medicine. The showdown was set for the wedding's reception on Sunday. Sally, who was watching the situation, reported that Mason and his mother were pacing around the dressing room because the bride, me, hadn't shown up.
What's going on? Did she run away?
That can't be.
This is why I didn't want you to marry a dropout with no common sense. We're going to be humiliated in front of our relatives.
His mother fumed.
I invited my boss and colleagues, too. This is a disaster. Mom, what should we do?
They were more worried about appearances than me. However, the bride never appeared.
We have no choice. Let's explain the situation to the guests and put all the blame on the bride.
Mason's mother headed to the reception hall where the guests were waiting.
The bride is a high school dropout with no common sense. We apologize for the delay,
Mason's mother announced to the guests, causing a stir.
What?
She said, seeing the reaction. At that moment, I stepped out from the back of the room. I'm here.
Why are you here?
What are you talking about? You arrived 3 hours late, so I started without you, I said.
The invitation said the ceremony was at 3 p.m.,
she argued, waving the invitation.
What's going on?
Mason, who came in later, also looked confused. The correct time is 12 p.m. It's clearly stated on the invitations and the hotel's information. I smirked as I held up the real invitation. I had given them fake invitations with the wrong time. Since I handled all the preparations, it was easy to deceive them. The guests applauded my explanation. Noticing the groom's arrival, a guest approached him.
The bride has been waiting for you,
one of Mason's colleagues said with a smile.
Thank you for coming,
Mason replied, smiling awkwardly.
You partied too hard last night and overslept, didn't you? Normally, the bride would be furious, but she made it into a funny story. She joked that you might be late because you were with your mistress, and everyone laughed.
His boss teased, causing another wave of laughter. Meanwhile, Mason's relatives were frowning.
Being late for your big day is unacceptable,
one muttered. But the real show was yet to come. With the bride and groom both present, the reception began. Everything went smoothly until a screen was set up.
Here's a video of how the couple met, prepared by the bride,
the MC announced.
What?
Mason looked confused. The lights dimmed, and the title Reasons for Marriage appeared on the screen. It was the dashcam footage of Mason boasting about marrying me for money.
What is this?
He turned pale. I wanted everyone to know the real reason you proposed, I said. Mason's mother, frantic, asked,
What is this? And who is that woman?
Mason was silent, while the guests buzzed. In the corner of the room, the mistress sat, embarrassed and trying to hide. She was a junior at Mason's workplace, now facing the guests' curious stares. Mason, cornered by his mother, turned pale and looked to me for help.
This is a misunderstanding.
What do you mean?
I only said those things to shut her up. It wasn't true.
Then why did you go to the hotel repeatedly? It's in the navigation history.
What?
Mason was at a loss. I had all the evidence of his infidelity and fraud. Later, I would sue him for damages. Mason's mother glared at me as she yelled,
You're shameless for embarrassing us like this.
I apologize for my lack of manners as a dropout. But your son is the real problem here. Maybe it's how you raised him. I shot back. I took the microphone and addressed the guests. Hello, everyone. I apologize for the inconvenience. As you can see, the groom has been unfaithful, so this wedding is off. I wasn't the one he truly cared for. I hope you all will guide me toward a happier future. The guests were in chaos, but Mason and his mother would handle the aftermath. In the dressing room, Sally came in.
It's over, she said.
Thanks for helping me.
Let's go eat something good,
she suggested. I agree, I said, leaving the venue with her. Later, I sued Mason for damages, including the wedding costs. His plan to get money from me backfired. I heard his family was shunned by their relatives, and his mother's pride was deeply wounded. Serves them right. With so many colleagues at the reception, Mason felt pressured to resign. Of course. Who would trust a conniving person who proposed marriage just for money? He turned to gambling and increased his debts. His prestigious degree is laughable now. The mistress also quit her job, unable to face her colleagues. They both got what they deserved. I sued her for damages too. She's now working as a hostess, trying to pay off her debts. I went on a healing trip with Sally, trying new activities and enjoying good food. A pair of guys approached us, looking cheerful. Talking with them, we found out that their company was surprisingly close to ours, and we made plans to go out for drinks together. It felt like something new was on the horizon. I pushed the memories of Mason and his mother out of my mind and visited my parents' grave to offer flowers.